Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for, what is this today? February 25th, 2022. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also on the meeting are Aaron McHale, who's sharing his screen, Andre Pedrosa, Antonia, Ben Mullins, Christina Chumias, Kimberly Amaral, Marina, Offer Schall, Ralph Kohler, and Tiago. Good groups today with a variety of experience, which I think is very helpful for usability issues. I don't think any of us are certified usability experts, but we do have designers, front and back end developers, site builders. We have beginners and we have longtime Drupal users. So all of those different points of view are helpful for understanding usability. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks, Benji. So we're going to be looking at the issue that Derek has asked us to review. It's a fairly straightforward issue. The issue number is 2906547, and it's to add links to the Drupal.org project page from the module listings at admin/module. So I've got the screen open here, and I have just, first module that came to my head was the flag module. So normally on any contrib module, we get the help link, permissions, and configure. Although I'm just going to apply the patch, and I'm going to refresh. And now we should see a link, a fourth link here to project homepage with a little home icon. And if I click on it, I control clicked, that opened in a new window or a new tab, but I believe that would open the same window. And it'll take you to the project page for, in this case, the flag module. So that's essentially what the patch does. And Derek had requested, which I'll just make sure that so if you just normal click on it, it'll just take you in the same window to the project page. But that's essentially what the patch does, and it adds that link for contrib projects. I'm just going to assume it, so it doesn't add it for any core modules. But I think Derek was just looking to make sure that this gets some usability feedback, make sure there's no issues here. And I believe, if I open spec, I believe this should be following the same pattern that we had previously agreed for how the link text is. In fact, here, let me just make sure I got that right. So I think it was this one. So it'll say project homepage, and then with a visibly hidden for flag, which is the module name. So that does have some more context for the screen reader users, which follows the same pattern that we had agreed at a previous meeting when we looked at these three links. That's essentially it. So if there's any feedback, happy to take that now.
This is amazing. I love this feature. I've been waiting for it for so long.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I share something?
Please
so the first thing I noticed is the difference between the number of words. Usually people say that the shorter the better. And I noticed that it's really dissonant because while the other links has just one word, project homepage has 3. And I think it could be shortened to like just project page, because home is already like people, it's you can understand that's for the page for the project. So I think we can omit home.
And Aaron, you already called it only project page after you've clicked it and we're on the actual project page. So maybe the briefer version is definitely a better choice.
Well, we do tend to strive for the sort of mantra of less is more. And actually, because we've got there's a home icon here already, so perhaps the word home is a little bit redundant. Does anybody else agree or disagree with that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so a recommendation would be to shorten it to just project page.
Yes, I think that would be perfect.
And is everybody okay with the icon then staying the same? So you have the home icon, can zoom in for anybody if you can't see it clearly.
And then the screen reader text would be project page for flag.
That's correct, yeah.
Marina says in the chat that she agrees as well.
Okay.
Have you looked at the comments? Is this an alternative that's been discussed previously?
Let's see. I'm not sure. Yeah, so this was an earlier version. So modules homepage. I don't like, personally, I don't like that as much.
I think one of the early comments suggests using online documentation instead of modules homepage, but that was rejected. I'm just searching the
Yeah.
issue for the word home.
So there's a good point here about the word project. We don't use project in the UI, even though it is part of the path on Drupal.org, but so are themes, etc. there. Using project here would introduce a new term without needing for it. So that's not such a good idea, is what it says in this comment here. The other term we tend to use sometimes is extension. So instead of project, so for instance, this could be like extension page. I don't think that works as well. Like project page, I think works better. Like project homepage, extension homepage, extension page.
But if you take into consideration that project browser is a thing and is coming into Drupal in the near future, then it may be consistent if we take the other route saying just project page.
Right. And perhaps that could impact where this link ends up going as well, because if we have the project browser and core, maybe that link just takes you to the page in the project browser itself.
Yep. I agree.
Also, I want to point out one thing that has been discussed on the issue is that some modules come with sub-modules. So there might be more than one module. There might be a UI module or a test module included with the main module. I guess flag, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good example actually. So if let's enable flag bookmark to see what happens.
So anyway, my point is simply that there's not a one-to-one relation between modules and project pages. So module page would be inaccurate, and that's been discussed on the issue.
Okay, so the link still appears and it still takes you to the flag homepage. I do wonder if this is a case of I'm just going to look at the patch actually quickly because, yeah, I wonder if it's in addition to the where it's getting it from. Oh, so that's okay. So it's hard coded based on the info file. Okay.
Right, and that's what it says in the issue comments.
Yeah.
There are other usability issues. For example, first of all, keep in mind the audience. This is a page for site administrators, not for unprivileged users. Second, when Aaron first demonstrated this, he right-clicked or control-clicked so that it would open in another tab. Since this is going off the site, some people would like it to open in another tab by default, but I think when you clicked directly on the link, it opened in the same tab.
Yeah, that's right. I think there might be some, I'm not an expert on it, but I believe there are some kind of accessibility concerns with using links that by default open in a new window or new tab. I think it's for sort of users of assistive technology, maybe don't realize where they've been taken to a new window. I'm sure there's something about that. So it might be a reason for us not making it open by default in a new window.
Yeah, and any other opinions on that question?
I agree that opening another window is better. It's something that usually annoys me sometimes when I open an external link and it opens in the same tab in the same page.
Okay, that would be something we could ask at the accessibility office hours or in the accessibility channel in Slack, because if it's an accessibility issue, then we shouldn't do it. But if it isn't, then maybe there's a good case to make it open in a new tab.
Yeah, my personal preference is to leave it the way it is. That I don't like links making the decision for me whether they're going to open a new tab or not. I can, like Aaron, right click on a link if I want that to happen. I know that marketers who have an interest in keeping you on their site will do that so that their page is still open. And I think Ralph is giving us a link in the chat to an accessibility article. Can you give us the short version of what that says? Does it agree or disagree?
Oops, sorry. It basically recommends not to use open the link in a new tab. That's the gist of it. W3C says, in general, it is better not to open new windows and tabs since they can be disorienting for people, especially people who have difficulty perceiving visual content.
Yeah, so that's what I thought was the case. So it's good that we have a resource to back that up.
And in the chat, Christina agrees with I think what Ralph is saying and the reference he cited. External link icon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, let me explain that. So basically, the thing is that so 100% agree, or probably 200% agree about not deciding for the user and letting them have an informed decision. I would say the closer thing to a standard icon to external links is what you have on this blog post. So that would be the perfect icon. And since ideally we are going to have Claro as the default admin theme soon, we have a component in Claro that it's called action link. And this action link is basically a link that has an icon next to it. I'm not sure if you remember, you have in mind, as example, the node edit form where you have the delete icon there where it has a trash next to the delete, I think, I'm not sure. So yeah, basically that's the idea, is to have a link that it has an icon there. So we already have this component for Claro. And I think having a link with an icon that says you're going outside the web, it's the best option. So I understand the home here as a Drupal user, but I don't think it will make a lot of sense for some user, because home in a website in that context is actually going back to a home page, not the Drupal homepage.
Right.
then it should be, instead of that, it should be a drop, which probably a lot of people wouldn't understand neither. So if we have to add an icon here, probably will be go outside. That's all.
So yeah, so like the external link icon, is that an icon that we have? Do you know if that's an icon we have right now in core, or were you saying that that's something that will be introduced into Claro, that external link icon?
We don't have that icon that I'm aware of right now in core, neither in core or Claro, neither in 7 icons or core icons or Claro, but that's something that can be added.
Okay.
And that's a really standard icon. We can just grab one that doesn't have, for sure, any can't find the word in English now, any restrictions to use it. So,
Okay.
or I can come up with a design, I mean, or anybody can find one.
So
So-
is that something that's actionable now, or would we have to wait until the icon is available before making that change?
I don't think the icon is mandatory for solving the issue. And that's something that can be spinned off as a follow-up, as a Claro issue to make this icon use the Claro markup needed to have that themed as an action link. So
Yeah,
I
so
would, yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, so we could open a follow. We could just have a follow-up issue opened and postponed for updating this icon when it becomes available.
Sorry, say it again.
So we could add a follow-up issue to this issue here that is just
Mhm.
marked as postponed. But when that icon is available, we could then use that issue to make the change from the home icon to the new like external icon that you're saying.
I wouldn't introduce the home icon here. I think it's a little bit misleading.
Okay, so would you want us to postpone this issue on having this new icon available?
Probably we don't really need to postpone it, but I can just go there and mention that I would change the icon from the home to the external link icon.
But we don't have the external link icon yet, so.
I can do that. I mean, I can find one and just do that in there and change the need review to needs work with the icon that I'm gonna suggest if you all agree.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so for the purposes of this meeting, then we're happy with the idea of instead of a home icon, a sort of external link style icon.
What other people think?
Yeah, I personally would agree that the external link icon is a good idea, but in the link you shared about accessibility, the author says about not using icons, and he explains that's the explanation from the site. Like, generally the icons used are a square with an arrow pointing to the top right, but there are lots of other around, and because there is no consistent icon there can be some ambiguity, which doesn't have everyone understand the purpose of the icon. That's the explanation about why to not use icons on the site. Not my opinion, though. I personally don't think it's a big issue, but just pointing that out.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I don't
I
think we can go without any icon because that will not be consistent in relation to the other links. And maybe we can postpone the icon change, but what we can do right now is maybe rephrase the text in the span and say external link to project page for module name. so that, in the meantime, until we have the icon in core, is what I'm trying to say.
And let me just summarize a bit of what I've seen in the chat. Marina posted a link to a sample icon, which is similar to some of the ones at the top of the accessibility page. And I think we all agree that's the sort of thing we're talking about. I'd like to point out that sort of the two changes we're suggesting are related. We're shortening project homepage to just project page. We're removing the word home, and we're suggesting a different icon instead of the home icon. So there's some consistency there. A question, are there any standard ways of indicating that a link is external? Is there maybe an ARIA label or some property that's commonly used for that?
I'm not sure if there's, maybe Ben has some background on the accessibility topic here.
I don't recall coming across that in anything I've read up on it, but that's not to say it doesn't exist. But yeah, it wasn't part of anything that I had to review for the exams or anything.
Okay, so I think to sort of speak on a point from earlier, I think the issue with the fact that these icons are all different is sort of related to when links open in a new tab or external. But I think it's less of an issue here because like the icon is used mostly to indicate, yeah, that it's just going somewhere. Like the icons, like these icons are all, again, they're all open to interpretation, I think, and that's part of the problem with icons. So if we were to pick an icon, like at least something like this is a slightly better than just a home icon, because as was pointed out earlier, a home icon can be easily confused for meaning the home page of a site. So, all these things like the icon for configure or permissions, or help, they're all kind of open to interpretation. But I think the best thing we could do in terms of an icon is something to the effect of one of these generally accepted, external link icons, which I think is what Christina was proposing earlier.
Yeah.
A lot of users are used to those, yeah. Sorry, Christina.
No, go ahead. Okay, well, basically what I was
recognizable.
Yeah. Yeah, so I understand that we have that as a background or as a common idea for this, we have a common experience with this icon. So we can't assume everybody's going to have an idea about what that is, and especially people with any kind of accessibility problem, someone that is going to need like assistance or whatever, like screen readers or something. I think that's way more important that if we use or not use an icon. I guess the most important thing is that we shouldn't rely just on the icon to explain all the information, but as long as there is text and there is alt text and there is all the other things, this is additional information that we are giving to whoever is going to click in there. So I think that doesn't invalidate the fact that we, on a design perspective, using an icon here can help, because all of the links here are going to have an icon, and then between one or the other, this one is the most commonly used. So I would say that's the argument.
And Antonio, did you want to come in as well?
Well, no, I think we were just saying the same thing, basically.
Okay.
The icons just have a certain degree of, familiarity among users.
Yeah, so the only other concern I have, which is something that was sort of mentioned a little bit as well, is that the fact that this link would go to an external site in this, Drupal.org, but these 3 links would not do that. I think I'm okay with that as long as there was a follow-up issue to look at it further, because potentially, as we discussed, the project browser is going to come soon. And so eventually this link might actually go to what you would perceive as another internal page in the site, just on the project browser. But it might be something that we should just have a follow-up issue there to make sure that that gets looked at or changed when the project browser is implemented in core.
So can we push this issue forward and add a follow-up for improving the icon?
I think we can. I'd like to do that rather than postpone it on adding an icon, which is sort of a distinct issue. One thing that worries me is that if we change the icon to show that it's an external link, what about people who don't see the icon? Should we also add something to the visually hidden text, pointing out that that it's an external link?
Yes, that's what I meant earlier, but it looks like we would need 2 spans.
So I guess how would we, like, would you do something like external link? Like, obviously we can't see this text, so it's other than in here, but would you do something, would we think something like that? Or is there a pattern for that kind of thing?
I think that's quite easy right now, but assistive technology, I think it's, the earlier the most important part comes, the better. So if we begin with external link, it would be great, but then again, we would need an additional span. But that would, I don't know how exactly the assistive technology would read this out, because in between the spans, there would be the actual link text.
So Christina and Ralph are giving +1 to adding something. And Tony, I don't know why you're talking about extra spans. What Aaron is demonstrating here is adding external link in parentheses within the same visually hidden span.
Yes, I see that. Maybe Aaron can answer the question about how screen readers read this out. I mean, is it, because I know, as far as I know, users tend to tap pretty quickly, and they just want to find the thing they're looking for as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so this was one of the conversations we had on a previous issue around the other links on this page, when we changed the structure to like link text and then for thing. So like in this case, like if I open up this one here, actually, which is right there. So configure for flag module and the help one. Oh, I wonder if 9.3, I wonder if that was added in 9.4. Okay, maybe this is a 9.3 site because the patch is written for 9.3. I think that might have been a 9.4 edition that we changed. But yeah, so the idea was that we made it so that the thing that you care most about, like this text, like help permissions configure, was the first thing that gets read out. Because especially on a page like this, if you're tabbing through a lot of links, you need to get that information as quickly as possible. Like even a few extra seconds there of having a screen reader read that to you is a lot of time in the context of the whole page. So In a previous issue, we made the decision to have the pattern, would be configure for flag or permissions for flag. As you can see, it's not here because I think it was a 9.4 change, but this is the pattern that we set it on. So that's just being reused here. So project page for flag would be the pattern we sort of agreed on.
Thank you.
So I
That's a
think,
great explanation.
Yeah, so I think in this case, the way I've done it is that essentially like external link wouldn't add any extra time if you were quickly tabbing through these things.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, that's good to know.
And
Thanks for
if a,
clearing that up.
Sure.
and if a user gets to that page for the first time, it's okay when it's read for him or her, project page for flag external link. And if the user gets the next time to it, then it could be skipped because he or she already knows, it's an external link going to the project page.
Right.
That way it's fine.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And there's an element of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good here. We're aware that there's room for improvement here, that the ideal is to have the same text for cited and non-cited users. But this is a lot better than the way it was, and some thought has already gone into this. I'd like to wrap up this issue. Are there additional points people would like to make before we move on? Is about halfway through the meeting. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to recommend shorten project homepage to project page, add external link in the visually hidden part of the text. And are we agreed on having a follow-up issue to change the icon? Or Christina, do you still think that should be done as part of this issue?
Yeah, but that's not a big deal.
So it's okay to do it as a follow-up?
Yeah, and maybe even when Claro is enabled, we just replace the icon directly, either on Claro or I don't know. Yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
And
Thanks, everyone.
Aaron, you'll update the issue?
Yes, happy to do that, and I can hopefully set up that follow-up as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. I'll stop sharing now.
And I think since the last time I announced, well, now we have in the recording the full list of participants. I think Thomas is the only one who joined. So again, I do have an issue that I'd be happy to discuss, but if there is anyone else who has an issue they'd like to bring up, speak up now.
Yeah, there's one I would like to bring. This is Ben.
Go ahead.
All right.
Share your screen and remember to read the issue number for the sake of the recording.
Absolutely. Okay. Just want to get things in order here. All right. So the issue number is 3264727, and it's titled "Categorized by Drupal Media, Drupal Image, Allow Removing Data Line in the UI and Making an Image in Line." And so what this specifically, the specific goals of the issue were that in CK Editor 5, there are buttons that allow you to align things. And there was not the option once aligned to then remove that alignment, just completely get rid of it and let it return to the default. So in implementing this issue, there were several opinionated choices made, and there's definitely not consensus regarding what it should be. So I'm going to bring up one of my specific concerns, and then the remainder of it I will just present as it is, and it's none of them could be necessarily categorized as concerns, but rather things that we have a disagreement about. But the one specific thing that I would like input on is, so in this case, these are drop-down buttons, but it also that what if the active selection, if one of these is an active selection, it's also shown in the primary toolbar here. So if I hover right now, this says wrap text : left aligned image. The option is also available in the dropdown, and it is not prefixed by, I've already forgot. So this one's prefixed by wrap text : this is the same option, but it's not prefixed by wrap text. And I believe that violates consistency and standards for Nielsen. But I would like to get either some confirmation or disputing of that. But then the remaining thing, and this is something that's been discussed, is that currently these are all different means of aligning the image. So inline, so if we choose this, it's basically among the text here. Then there's the text wraps around it and it's aligned to the left. This one's the text is wrapped, but it aligns to the right. And then this one, it breaks text. So it's aligned, but there's no text. So center, and that actually should be going to the left. So pretend as if that is moving to the left for the purposes of this. But the disagreement we've had is that these are all alignment related controls. Some are subgrouped into these individual items, and then others, such as making it return or making it go in line, is not subgrouped. And during one iteration, all of these had separate buttons, and there were concerns that those buttons were too much. So I could open things up now for thoughts, I guess, regarding both the wording and the multiple buttons, or I can take you through some of the comments that where this discussion has already taken place. So yeah, let me know.
There are a preview somewhere where we can see all the buttons aligned together.
Let's see.
long?
Yeah. If there was a.
I mean, how much? How many items are there?
It would be, let's see. So it would turn it into 5. And I think there potentially could be a 6th. In core, it wouldn't go beyond that, but it could potentially exceed that with custom plugins.
One question, and what would happen on a smaller viewport, for example, on an iPhone, if the icons are too broad, if without those subcategories, and if they are stacked in one line, would it be a second line then, or?
Let's take a look. So on a touch device, this is the reliance on the visual is not ideal either, but that's for another. And so it's essentially the same experience.
Okay,
Yeah.
a second. Okay.
I would, well, throwing here an idea, I would probably say, if we are not going further, at least in core, than 5, I would say if I can see them together, it could give me more sense than what I'm seeing right now, because I would see all the icons together and I will maybe be able to read or interpret, understand better what each of them actually mean. Because I'm thinking, for example, on Figma or other UI things where you can actually align things. You usually have all of them together if you have a space. Because right now we have 3 icons, which actually it's just one and shortcuts to other ones. And it's probably taking the same space as we would have with 4, meaning that maybe having 5 of them here, it's not that bad, and it could be a better way to have a whole an idea of all the options that I have. But what it makes me not completely sure about that is the option that it can be increased to, I don't know, a lot of other options here, and how difficult it could be for site builders to understand that they can have like group items, and it can be toggled. I mean, basically, because if you just click in here and you have the bar at the top and you just have to click on the bar, it's way easier to understand that the small caret in here is to drop to open another set of options in here, you know? So I'm just thinking maybe that's easier to have all the options at the same level together. But of course, if we have more options there in the future.
Okay.
That's what I would think right now, and maybe somebody actually comes up with a better idea than this, and I just changed my thoughts. But that's what I would say on a first.
I agree with Christina that having these organized this way, at least for me, I have the feeling that having 2 different buttons, each one of its own drop down, it seems to me like they're related to different things, not that they're going to affect the same alignment. So I think either placing all of them in the same line together, or another idea, placing all of them in a single drop down. Like you would click the drop down and you would see the 4 or 5 or 6 options of alignment. An idea that I think it could work.
From my personal preference, I think if you hide in quotes, in double quotes, a few of those icons in subgroups, it's every time an extra click. If a site builder has, for example, an article with 20 pictures and images, and the site builder wants now to alter the position of each image, and those desired positions aren't the default ones for the ones of the subgroup, then it's all the time an extra click, and it gets quite cumbersome to get to a point. So if the number of icons is around 5 or 6, it should be tried to keep it in the root level, basically, and not in one sub-level, in my humble opinion.
All right.
But I think no one has addressed the explicit question that then asked at the start about having different hover text for the default option in the drop button and the same option when it appears later. I think I agree with Ben that that's really weird and a pretty clear usability concern. I wonder what the argument is in favor of having different hover text.
Let me revisit it. See, I brought it up and okay. Oh, and so Lara's justification was saying a single drop down was something considered, but that he was interested in explaining the nuance between the different alignment options, breaking text versus wrapping text. But okay, yeah, it sounds like having them grouped together is certainly on the table. Okay, I perhaps am just remembering incorrectly regarding any pushback about the inconsistent labeling. So in this case, then it looks like no one's I think particularly married to the idea, but it's nice to have some additional agreement that I can document that needs to be changed. So I'll keep that. I'm gonna write that down right now.
So I don't love having the drop button pattern used here. And I think that we have to balance the various usability concerns. So one is, as Ralph points out, reducing the number of clicks. And the way to do that, of course, is to get rid of the drop buttons. But there are other usability concerns, such as we want to avoid having an overwhelming list. If we had 30 different options, then we would clearly have to group them to help people find the right thing. So there's the discoverability and the predictability, and we have to balance that against the extra clicks involved in grouping things. Christina adds in the chat, it adds complexity to learn and understand the UI. I think you mean having the drop buttons adds complexity, right? Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, when there are a lot of options, there isn't a clear usability win, and we have to choose: are we going to reduce the number of clicks, or are we going to have additional organization?
And I do wonder if having them adjacent to each other might make their respective purposes more clear. Where on their own, I think many of these buttons are not. They're not, in my opinion, they don't strike me as particularly self-explanatory, but their purpose becomes more clear when seen next to each other. So there's something to compare to that, and that's my subjective opinion then. But that would be facilitated better if they were all visible at the same time and next to each other.
And I honestly, as a user, I wouldn't be bothered if there are too many icons and they wrap to a second line.
Okay.
I prefer seeing them all together in line.
Great.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I think like having them all there because they're all like they all produce outputs that are dependent on one another. Like the way you demonstrated them, it looks like obviously you can't have more than one of them active at once, because that would just, they're all to do with aligning the thing. But if you look at it as well, the amount of additional space that adding the additional icons would take up is actually not much, because the two drop down arrows there are the equivalent, almost roughly the equivalent of one extra icon. So you're really only adding another extra icon in terms of visual space that it takes up there. So I don't think there's a huge issue with like just putting them all on one line.
Yep. All right. Well, actually, yeah, that's good. Oh, go ahead.
We have about 5 minutes left. Shall we take a vote with thumbs up, thumbs down, or typing in the chat? Or are there other arguments we'd like to hear at this point? So all in favor of getting rid of the drop buttons and just having everything in one list that might wrap to a second line? Who agrees with that suggestion? I see a yes and a +1 and a +1 from another +1. I think that's pretty good consensus.
All right, that's fantastic.
And anyone want to play the devil's advocate or suggest an argument in favor of more structure? And Antonia says also +1 for consistent tooltips.
Yeah, the only downside that I see in here is the moment that we start adding more things yeah, I don't know, more plugins in here, and this can become very crazy. And if, as I was saying, site builders don't know how to organize this properly, this can be like really, this can become a mess, but I'm not sure up to which point we are responsible of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that if we do need to have drop downs, we should have straight drop downs instead of drop buttons. That will mean an extra click a lot of the time. But I think that's outweighed by the organizational improvement. But yeah, I think at the current level with maybe 10-ish or so, just having them all visible and separated by vertical bars, the same pattern we use for the toolbar, seems like a better arrangement to me.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, for bringing that up. So Ben, you'll take care of updating the issue summary?
Yes,
Or
I will.
I'm sorry, adding a comment.
Yep, I'll take care of that.
And please do include a link to the issue for today's meeting. That's in the UX channel.
Okay, will do.
That's where the recording will be as soon as I get around to it. Great. So thank you all for coming. We'll do this again next week. I hope many of you can make it. And till then, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Nice weekend.